So I still see so many people on bookstagram and booktube asking what order in which you should read the Secret Shanghai series by Chloe Gong. And that just won't do. Secret Shanghai is one of my absolute favourite series. I am a Chloe Gong fan first and a human second. It is my purpose in life to make sure you all know the order of this series so that you can experience the masterpiece that is Secret Shanghai. It's literally my channel header, so this only makes sense for me. So that's what we're doing in today's video. Without further ado, let's get into it. So if you're a frequent observer of bookish things on the internet, you have likely seen this series talked about on multiple platforms. But if you haven't, Secret Shanghai is a young adult historical fantasy series. It is a two-part series containing two duologies whose storylines intertwine and revolve mostly around the same characters, although we focus on a different core cast in each duology. So I'm going to go by each book in order of the way you should read it, give a little summary, a little information about the book, and some of my opinions on it. Because this is a series, some of the major plot points of the later books I can't really get into because of spoilers, so I'm gonna be very vague with a lot of the books, but hopefully you'll get the gist. But the main point is so that you know the order in which they all should be read in. I don't think I've seen anyone make a video about this and make a guide to this series. I think Chloe herself made one on Instagram, but if anyone else has done a guide to the series, then all credit to them, and make sure to check out their content. So firstly, we have These Violent Delights. These Violent Delights was the first book of the series to be published and is also the first chronologically within the events of the story. So These Violent Delights is a retelling of Romeo and Juliet, set in 1926, where a blood feud between two gangs runs rampant through the streets of Shanghai. Juliet Tsai is the heir to the Scarlet Gang, and Roman Montikov is the heir to the White Flowers. They are enemies by birthright, but their hatred runs deeper than that. Juliet was Roman's first love, and he betrayed her. But there is a monster on the loose, and madness is spreading, so they must lay down their weapons and work together to solve this mystery and save their people. This book is all angst and I love it, and somehow it just gets angstier in the next book. I would say romance is definitely a big part of this series as a whole. Personally, I really love the romance in this. I think it's beautifully done. I love Romeo and Juliet individually, plus their banter is ridiculously silly. I have absolutely cackled out loud at them on multiple occasions. We also have another romance between Roma's two best friends, Benedict and Marshall. They are also so silly and I love them both. We have really interesting dynamics between Juliet and her two cousins, Celia, who goes by Kathleen in this book, and Rosalind, and then the dynamic between the two sisters themselves. So Celia is trans, and you get a bit of backstory as to why she goes by Kathleen instead of Celia. However, I will be referring to her as Celia throughout this video because that's her chosen name. So just to clear up in case you start reading it and are like thoroughly confused. But it does inform you the reasons as to why, so you'll find out fairly soon. I love reading sibling relationships, and I think Chloe does a really wonderful job at showing the tensions that can arise between family members, being in the profession that they are. And during a politically tumultuous time, there's also a lot of shifting loyalties. So it's interesting to see each character's perspective on their current situation or status even, and how it differs from one another. So there's lots of spying and undercover work in order to solve this mystery of this madness that is spreading throughout the city. Also happens to involve a lot of breaking into places and being just generally destructive. Both Roma and Juliet also have people who are trying to undermine their positions as heirs to their respective gangs. So there's also tension within each gang as well, and for Roma between him and his father. I do want to clarify that overall this series leans far more historical fiction mystery as opposed to fantasy. The madness that the kids are investigating is definitely a little fantastical, but within the world is written to be like made from science. But yeah, I really enjoyed this book the first time reading it, and the second time. It's just, like I said, like a fun fantasy, light fantasy mystery. The family dynamics are really interesting. The dynamics within the gangs, and also the effect that they have on like the people surrounding them, as well as of course the romance. But yeah, this is a really solid first book and I really enjoy it. Next we have Our Violent Ends. Now truly I cannot summarize this plot without spoiling the end of TVD These Violent Delights. So I'm going to be extremely vague in explaining what this book is about so that you can truly experience the roller coaster that is this book. The main conflict of this book is that the blood feud has reached a breaking point, and on top of that, Shanghai is also experiencing a revolution, and there's a threat of civil war. So, disaster. Plus, the mystery of the madness continues. So that's quite literally all I can tell you without spoiling the end of These Violent Delights. Just some quick thoughts about this before we move on. I mentioned the angst in TVD. That has nothing on Our Violent Ends. Like, this is off the charts. This book is peak, I hate you so much and yet I can't stop loving you. Rereading this book had me crying like every other chapter. Ben and Marshall. I mean, one of their quotes is my channel header, so the romance in this book, like across the board, is like truly heart-wrenching. And every single one of these kids needs a hug. They go through some crazy stuff in these books. Okay, so that's the first two. If you didn't know, in Australia, the first year that a book is published, it gets printed in the big format. But after that, it gets like sized down to the regular paperback size. And I like just missed out on getting the big size, so I have a small TVD and then all my other Secret Shanghai books are the big size. Another thing that bugs me is that this book, I don't know what it is because I don't have this issue with any of my other Secret Shanghai books, but the cover is just like slightly shorter than the actual pages, like that line there. But anyway, I have like thoroughly underlined and annotated these books when I reread them before the final book released last year. But yeah, they are the first two. That is the first duology. So they are the first books that you need to read in order to understand the timeline and the events that lead into the second duology. I love the first duology. I think it's fantastic. However, I will say that the second duology is my personal fave. So following the events of These Violent Delights and Our Violent Ends, we have the second part of the Secret Shanghai series. We start with Foul Lady Fortune. So Foul Lady Fortune is a retelling of As You Like It, set 4 years after the ending of Our Violent Ends. Our main character is Rosalind Lang, Juliet's cousin, except a few years ago she was injected with something that stopped her from sleeping, aging, and allows her to heal any wound. AKA, she can't die. Because of this, she decided to become an assassin for her country. I mean, obviously, like, is there any other option once that happens to you? No. However, the Japanese Imperial Army is invading, and her agency wants her to shift gears. There's been a string of murders throughout the city, and the Japanese are the top suspect. Rosalind's objective now is to go undercover among the Japanese and discover who is behind these murders. But to reduce suspicion while undercover, she has to pretend to be the wife of another agent, Orion Hong. The thing is, Rosalind can't stand Orion's playboy personality. They agree to work together to solve this mystery, but tensions rise as they both try to hide their own secrets, and as they realize that there's more to these murders than they first suspected. I just need to say that Rosalind is my girl. She is everything to me. I love her so much. She deserves every bit of love in this world. All her trauma needs to be taken away from her and replaced with good, happy memories. She only ever deserves good things in life. I kind of hated her when I was reading TVD and OVE for the first time, but this book made me switch up so fast. I love all the characters in this series, but Rosalind definitely takes the cake. Anyways, Rosalind and Orion are so special to me. Their love story is so beautiful. A lot of it is Rosalind in particular learning how to accept love and learning how to express their love for other people. They are fake married, but from the very beginning they genuinely act like an old married couple. And it's hilarious and sweet. I also want to remove all of Orion's trauma and give him nothing but happiness. He's kind of vaguely giving Logan from Gilmore Girls, like rich playboy, except he's much nicer to other people than Logan was. And of course, it's all a show to hide his extensive childhood trauma. We also have some truly hilarious characters, namely Elisa. She's such an MVP, honestly. She is from the original duology. She's actually Roma's little sister, but of course now she's all grown up. She's an absolute gremlin, but she gets the job done. Meanwhile, everyone else is still arguing. Elisa is also Rosalind and Celia's adoptive sister. They all act like siblings. She's not actually their adoptive sister, so you don't get confused. I want to make that clear. But Rosalind and Elisa have some like 10 out of 10 interactions in this book. I love them. And then we have Silas and Phoebe, and they will never not be up to some shenanigans. I swear like half of half of Orion's stress in this book is due to those two not doing what they're told. And then we have Celia and Oliver out in the rural parts of Shanghai, undercover, being the epitome of wholesome. Well, like a deadly wholesome. The ending of this book is such a wild ride. We have so many plot twists in this book, but the last 100 pages, insane. I was actually losing my mind the first time I read this. I wasn't even able to write a coherent review until I reread it, and having to wait a year to find out what happens, torture. So I recommend you have the second book of this duology handy when you finish Foul Lady Fortune. I really can't get into any plot related things because it will spoil the ending of TVD and OVE, but this book involves even more spying and sneaking around, except Rosalind and Orion are much subtler at their job than Roma and Juliet. I guess being the heirs to the scariest, biggest, only gangs in the city kind of has its perks when it comes to hunting down criminals. Rosalind and Orion, however, have to be a little on the down low, as they are undercover agents. Sort of comes with the job. So that's Foul Lady Fortune, and that's the first of the second duology. However, we also have a novella that takes place in between the second duology. So this is Last Violent Call. So this novella bridges the gap between These Violent Delights, Our Violent Ends, Foul Lady Fortune, before we get to the last book of the series. I feel like a broken record, but unfortunately, I cannot say a single thing about this book without giving major spoilers. Like I said, it just gives us a little more context as to the conflict in Foul Lady Fortune and helps set up some characters for the next book. I wouldn't say this is absolutely necessary to read in order to understand what happens in the final book. However, it is handy to know and you get some really cute content, so I would recommend. We have officially reached the end. This book was my Joker. I thought about it every goddamn day upon finishing Foul Lady Fortune right up to release day. Any snippet of this book that Chloe Gong gifted us, I was sobbing. I was unwell. So the final book is Foul Heart Huntsman. This is a chunky book. I don't know why it's just struck me, but I think it's the same length as Our Violent Ends, but I think going from holding this book to this book, it's really apparent. But anyway, the final book, Foul Heart Huntsman. Not to repeat myself, but I cannot summarize this plot without spoiling everything. Basically, we're on a little quest to retrieve something. Tensions are high, disaster is occurring, pining is at an all-time high, found family is found familying, even though half of them are actually family, but whatever. Romance abounds. A large portion of this book is catharsis for readers, to be like, here, I've tortured you for 3 books, have some ridiculously cute and fluffy scenes in between the actions so that you can relax and breathe, which I love. Other books have not been so kind. Foul Lady Fortune is very much Rosalind and Orion's book, in my opinion, but Foul Heart Huntsman really made me fall in love with Celia and Oliver and Phoebe and Silas. And of course, I've loved Elisa from the start, but I feel like each of them really get their moment to truly shine in this book, both individually and as couples. This is again another action-packed. I wouldn't say this is as angsty as the rest of them. I mean, it definitely is for like a certain portion of it because of one particular thing that happens. But I feel like the rest of it, we really have like a go team go, like the gang's all together, we're like fighting crime and winning stuff and I don't know. But yeah, it's just another fun action-packed adventure. I really love this as a conclusion to the series. I think it gives us everything we need. So there we have it, the complete order of the Secret Shanghai series. If you couldn't tell, I really love this series. I think it deserves all the hype it got on BookTok when These Violent Delights first came out. I honestly think the series just gets better as you progress, and even if you read it when it first came out and it wasn't for you, I implore you to try again if you normally like this sort of book. When I first read Our Violent Ends, I was in a bit of a reading slump, so I didn't love it as much as I loved These Violent Delights, but when I reread it, I couldn't get enough. I actually think I prefer Our Violent Ends to These Violent Delights, but I'm gonna have to reread another time to make a conclusion on that. Anyways, I think I've made my enthusiasm for this series pretty apparent by now. I do also want to do some shameless self-promo before the end of this video. If you didn't know, I have an art account where I draw fan art, mostly of book characters. I'll have my account on the screen somewhere. If you have read the books before, you may have seen this art around. This is Rosalind and Orion. this one, Romeo and Juliet, and I just recently finished this one of the 3 girls from These Violent Delights, Juliet, Celia and Rosalind. I have some more over on my Instagram account if you want to check them out to aid in your brain rot that you will undoubtedly have after finishing this series. I would very much appreciate it. That's all for today though. I hope you enjoyed this video and it convinced you to read this series and helped you understand how to read this series. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe and I'll see you next time.